Individuals do not make economies.
Remember, nearly 35 to 40% of the BJP MPs were not members of BJP 6 months ago.
We've seen about 400 to 500 projects being stalled in India on the basis of environmental clearances not having been provided as yet.
Every time we talk about India, we're talking about India stealing jobs or Indians taking jobs, Indians doing all the bad things and getting into crime, driving taxis and stuff. But what we are not talking about is $23 billion worth of investment in Australia.
Do you know that Modi begins the day at 5 a.m. With yoga practice? But then it goes straight onto the internet to find out the latest news. So here is a person who is something old and something new in the one man. Interesting to find that in the 12 or 13 years that he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, he never once took a holiday. This man has got commitment to service, isn't it? I guess. So I imagine that the bureaucrats in Delhi are thinking, okay, we're going to be busy. Correct? And I'd like to kick off by asking Professor Anthony DeCosta, who's Chair of Contemporary India Studies at Melbourne Uni. You've studied the progress of China, you've studied the Indian economy. What do you think of the comparisons and what will change under Modi?
Let me answer it in two ways. I think the first has to do with the idea that, and this is the positive part of it, that for the first time we have a significant sort of change in the leadership. Lots of different steps to encouraging investments, whether they are foreign investments, whether they are domestic investments, whether they are in retail business, whether they are in heavy manufacturing, whether they're in light manufacturing. There's all these questions, which of course only his sort of, experts ought to sort of advise him in certain sort of ways. So that's one. But then the other thing I want to say, and in that sense, of course, he is being compared to Deng Xiaoping. But I have to say that, when we look at economic change, we really do not have the same initial conditions. And the second thing, a briefer point, is that individuals do not make economies. This is something that we need to be very, very careful. Mr. Obama, to take another example, he's the most powerful man in some ways, and yet what does he do about the economy? He can't do very much. He's being pulled and pushed in all kinds of directions. So yes, he can have his monetary authority control inflation, control interest rates in certain ways, and perhaps encourage employment, but these are very contradictory goals at a macroeconomic level. So the question, of course, is who else does he have on board in order to manage the macroeconomic aspect, which is basically, I think immediately inflation would be one, food prices would be the other.
If you look at the top players, collectively are earning something like $3 billion in revenue. So they've had a significant growth in this market. So that's a fantastic achievement. But when you compare that against the $20+ billion that India spends, with Australian companies, there's a significant imbalance that you see. Where I'm going with that analogy is that there is a significant headroom for Australian companies to engage with India.
I think this is a very exciting time for Australian businesses, because if you look at the BJP manifesto, and it's a marvelous document, and it really paints a picture of the vision that Modi has for India. He talks about an inclusive and a participative democracy. He talks about better quality of living for everybody, not just for a few, for all of India, including rural India. He talks about building a knowledge economy. He talks about healthcare. He talks about infrastructure, of course. That's just really the tip of the iceberg, really, about Modi's vision, and I would encourage each and every one of you to sort of read that manifesto in more detail. But from that comes out certain key agenda items that he will be pushing forward with. On the infrastructure side of things, Modi is planning to build 100 new cities in India. That's going to need buildings, it's going to need steel, that's more resources, not going to help the trade imbalance issue, but certainly it's going to need more resources from Australia. It's going to need architects, consulting engineers, it's going to need project managers. Again, a lot of the know-how that we have is, can be leveraged in India.
Over the next 3 months, we are going to see a great deal of changes. we're going to see a lot of restructuring. A lot of people being moved around, a lot of portfolios being moved around. New ministers will inevitably be inducted into the government because the Manmohan Singh government had 71 ministers. This government has 45. And although Modi has said that he wants minimum government, maximum governance, but perhaps for a country the size of India, 45 ministers may be too few. So there are still a lot of people who are close to Modi, government, but they are not yet in government. And part of the reason why these people are not in government is because they are not in the parliament. And under the Indian Constitution, a prime minister can appoint a minister who is not a member of parliament, but he or she must become a member of parliament within 6 months. And the only way to make somebody a member of parliament within 6 months is to make them a member of Rajya Sabha.
It was very interesting to note that Maneka Gandhi, who one would have thought may get the environment ministry, did not get that. And what that signals is the fact that that Modi is not going to have an environment minister who is too obstructionist. So he's going to be pro-industry, pro-business, because we've seen about 400 to 500 projects being stalled in India on the basis of environmental clearances not having been provided as yet.
Do you think expectations are too high about what Modi can achieve in terms of accord with Pakistan?
But I am very cautious about outcome of this. Particularly, remember that the major issue that divides India and Pakistan is the Kashmir issue. Modi may not be Deng Xiaoping. Modi's been compared with Deng Xiaoping, Shinzo Abe, Margaret Thatcher, Richard Nixon. He's been compared with everybody. But Modi will be Modi, I believe. And Modi will have to make decisions. Modi, remember, is a newcomer to foreign policy. He will also make mistakes. There is a tendency in sections of the Indian population and the media to portray Modi as some sort of demigod. He's going to solve all the problems. He will not. As far as Pakistan is concerned, I think the government's agenda in India is going to be to try and maintain peace and stability on the border with Pakistan. And as a bonus, try to open up further trade and commerce with Pakistan.
This place wouldn't be the same without the Indian diaspora. The contribution it's made socially, economically to Australia has been amazing. And my question to you is, you were in touch with that diaspora. Was it much of a talking point, and how did you see that playing out?
I think he's a yogi, so he believes in prana yoga, jnana yoga, and karma yoga. That's what this whole thing of getting up at 5 a.m. and really doing that exercise. What we call yoga is actually prana yoga, and then he goes on internet and finds out and does his research, and then his rest of the day is actually doing good for the society, and what he believes in is good according to his principles. 24/7 electricity. There's no gas. There's no water supply. Forget about jobs. That's level 2 or level 3 of human satisfaction. So that creates a level of distrust. So the first vote which the youth gave to Modi was not on his Hindu nationalism or anything of that kind, but about his nation building credentials. Every time we talk about India, we're talking about India stealing jobs or Indians taking jobs, Indians doing all the bad things and getting into crime, driving taxis and stuff. But what we are not talking about is $23 billion worth of investment in Australia. What we are not talking about is Indians contributing to education sector, creating lots of jobs. In Wyndham itself we had, or not, in Geelong, which is a neighbouring council, there was an aviation company that was going bankrupt. That company was bought by Satya Mahindra. I don't know, maybe Tech Mahindra now.
When you're building, state-of-the-art infrastructure, you need to use capital equipment, and which means that you're not really going to create a whole lot of jobs relative to what you could have, let's say, if you were, not using, state-of-the-art technology. So I think this is one thing, and this is something that not just India, but virtually all developing countries are faced with. In other words, you want to be competitive, you want to play the global game, you have to be just like them. You don't have a choice of saying, well, I'll use, last year's vintage of technology. No, you have to use the state-of-the-art.
Why do you think this time you attracted Sri Lanka so much in this relationship to come back? Because I'm sure there's a lot of things went wrong last couple of years in the Sri Lanka-India relationship. And why is Sri Lanka is important now?
the Tamil problem in Sri Lanka is something which concerns a lot of people in India, particularly in the state of Tamil Nadu. And the Manmohan Singh government obviously was sensitive to the concerns of particularly one political party in Tamil Nadu, the DMK, because DMK was part of the alliance, the UPA alliance, and therefore Manmohan Singh had to take into account their considerations. But you might remember that one of the UN resolutions where India voted for that resolution, and the DMK withdrew from the government. In many ways after that, the DMK, the UPA government became liberated from the constraints. But still Manmohan Singh government was reserved in terms of taking into account the concerns of the Tamil people. Modi, before he came to power, before he got elected, he said that his foreign policy is going to be sensitive to the demands of the states, because he was the chief minister of a state for 13 years. And he said foreign policy in India has for too long been dominated by the central government, and in the future foreign policy in India must take into account the concerns of the state governments. And on his very first day, he forgot that principle. Because Tamil Nadu, all political parties in Tamil Nadu are very unhappy with Modi. Because he invited Mahinda Rajapaksa to his swearing-in ceremony. So he defied Jayalalitha, his friend. He defied DMK. He even defied the 5 small political parties, including Vaiko in Tamil Nadu, who were actually supporters of Modi. So this is going to be a fallout, and in the next few weeks, I think Modi will have to spend a lot of time trying to pacify the anger which is growing in Tamil Nadu.
India as a nation is a very tolerant nation. So people are tolerant, though they said people have higher expectations. But if they see momentum, that drives hope, right? So they will wait, but they got to see, even if it is not dramatic shift, even if it is incremental, people will wait to engage.
Thank you.